from the News Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight, talking about a very important topic. We are looking at some bills in the General Assembly. These are bills that directly impact the LGBTQ community, and they are of great concern to that community. There are a lot of bills that are being discussed along those lines. Of course, there were last year. There are again this year. We have with us via Zoom Chris Sanders. He is the executive director of the Tennessee Equality Project. Chris, thank you again for coming on.
Well, thank you, Ben, and happy Mardi Gras to everyone who's watching tonight.
That's right. And we're right before the State of the Union, so this is certainly political, certainly something going on in our state if you're watching in advance of what's about to happen on the national level. Now, all right, Tennessee Equality Project, part of what you do is monitor what's going on at the legislature. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a big part of what we do. It's why we were founded, and we have certainly had plenty of work to do since our first legislative session in 2005. It really hasn't let up, and it's certainly increased in the last few years.
When you were on last year, I think you said it was one of the more difficult years in recent memory. So what are you looking at as you go through the bills that are being proposed? What do you think about this year?
This one is tougher than last, and last year was definitely one of the toughest ever. There are more bills, and they are covering more topics, and it's still early enough in the session that it's hard to tell the extent to which the legislature has a will to pass them. But based on the bills that passed last year, we have to treat all of them as if they could advance. So we're still in the process of sorting through what's going to move and how far.
I'm looking at some newspaper articles here. It says 5 anti-LGBTQ bills passed last year. Would you agree with that? 5?
Yep.
And how would you characterize them? What kind of stands out? I could kind of go over them, but what would you say about those?
Sure. A lot of them attack trans youth, but there are also bills related to curriculum. There was a bill that said that parents could opt their kids out of any curriculum or any lesson that included a reference to LGBTQ issues, people, etc. I would characterize it overall as very youth-focused and then heavily trans-focused as well, transgender people-focused.
That was last year. Is the same true this year, or is there a new focus, or is that focus from last year continuing? So
it's some of the same elements, but wait, there's more kind of thing. There are several attacks on trans youth, and there are more curriculum bills, more bills about libraries and obscenity, which I believe is one of the big elements we're going to talk about tonight, is these bills that focus on school libraries and what's in the libraries and how the state is going to regulate that. So that is a big focus this year, and we can talk about why that is too.
And I do want to talk about that, and I want to get into the details of some of those proposals, all of the proposals. But let me ask you big picture. Why do you think these bills keep coming up year after year? And I guess I have a theory, but I want to hear what is your theory? Why do you think these bills keep coming up?
Well, I forget who said that politics is war waged by other means. That's a paraphrase, but in politics, some people consider it useful to have an enemy. And we're not the only enemy by any means, and we're going to talk about how these library bills affect other communities as well. But, I think being able to point to someone who is unpopular and say, this is the source of our problems, creates a false unity on another side that is politically expedient. But that's speculative. What matters to me is that these bills are real, that they attack my community and other communities, and more broadly, they are a snow job on the people of Tennessee. Because in the end, what will get all of us is poorer education, poorer instruction, poorer knowledge base, and less preparation for the world as it really is. So, yes, it's going to attack us directly, but it's going to affect all of us because it hits our knowledge base.
Interesting. And yes, I feel like there is this, there's this thought that it kind of rallies a base, right? And so that's why these bills keep coming up. And it seems like they are just coming up with new ways to kind of go after the same kind of thing. Right. And so my question is, you look at these 5 bills that passed last year. You said one of the worst years in recent memory for you. What impact have those 5 bills had? They certainly at the time got the base and everybody all riled up. What impact a year later has the fact that those passed had?
Well, I know families who have moved or are moving because of the climate these bills, create in our state. Of course, there are many families who can't move, who have to deal with being terrorized by their state government. It is leading to all kinds of confusion and discrimination in our school districts. After this legislative session, when we had back to school in August last year, we got more calls. GLSEN, which is an LGBTQ education organization focused on K through 12 education, got more calls than I think probably ever before on bullying incidents, but not just from fellow students, from principals and teachers taking these bills and running with them, even in ways that aren't explicitly spelled out in the bill. I mean, there are just, and that's really sad because you want youth to be able to look to their teachers and principals for support and leadership and some level of affirmation, I would hope, and guidance. And instead, what we found was there were people, and of course there are well over 100 school districts in the state, so all kinds of variety. You found all these instances of people just taking these interpretations and treating students horribly. So those are some of the real impacts. Further impact long-term for the state is getting sued because of some of the bills that became law last year. And I believe the state's going to lose. And I think the state will pay as a result. There are better ways to learn how to treat people than to pass really bad laws and get sued. If you would listen to people who are frequently discriminated against, you could set policy based on that instead of trying to further marginalize them. But, in the end, our community's not going to take it, and we're going to fight back, whether in the legislature at the ballot or in the courts. And we would rather there be an easier way for the state to learn, but we're determined that the state will learn one way or the other.
To what extent are these the brainchild of Tennessee lawmakers, individual Tennessee lawmakers? Or is this part of something we're seeing nationally that's going on in a bunch of states?
So some bills are indeed innovations within our state. The anti-transgender sign bill for businesses last year was an innovation created right here in Tennessee, and I hope it doesn't get exported to other states. But a lot of the bills do come from other places. And let's talk about why that's such a big deal right now. We've had these bad bills many years before, but they've been given new impetus this year because of the Virginia governor's race. Part of what happened in the Virginia governor's race was this vague idea of parental rights in education became an important theme that is one factor that helped propel the right to victory in that race. And I think some Republican strategists around the country looked at that and said, we should test that more. Let's see if we can win on that. And I think what's happening, since this is an important legislative election year, I mean, all of our Tennessee House and half the Tennessee Senate is up for re-election in new districts. I think that's why you get so many, particularly obscenity, censorship, parental rights bills in Tennessee this year and in other states.
Interesting. And so what you're saying, it sounds like, is the new battleground, or the current battleground, or the ongoing battleground, I guess, is it new, is schools. I mean, what we're talking about is, you look at these bills, and we're going to go over them, but it looks like a common theme is schools, libraries, schools, our kids. Is that right? Is that our battle? Is that the battleground now?
I think so. It's a different framing of it. This parental rights thing. I mean, it sounds like an old idea, and it is in a way, but old ideas get put in new words and repackaged and take on new life depending upon changing circumstances. And political operatives and pollsters are always retesting what is working, and different things work, and sometimes they fall flat. But this caught fire, the last 2 years. And it may propel passage of some of these really bad bills in various states, not just Tennessee.
And I guess I'm getting at, too, do you think these are designed, they're going to come up year after year just to kind of get the base all riled up? But your answer was very interesting to me. I asked what was the impact, and you said the impact is there is more discrimination, more bullying. These bills, they serve to belittle and degrade, but they're like little cuts, right? The bigger damage is almost just that they keep coming up year after year. It's like they're trying to do the same thing in a different way every year. Is that true, or am I way off there?
Yeah. If you're not an LGBTQ kid or an LGBTQ adult who's been an LGBTQ kid, it's hard to estimate the impact if you're 14, and constantly in the news every year is that your state government thinks you are so bad they've got to pass legislation about you. And it's hard to for a lot of Tennesseans maybe to put themselves in that position. But that's the position I would ask them empathetically to enter into for just a minute and realize why, as you indicate, the mere filing of the bills year after year, whether they pass or not, is one bad thing. But when they pass, there are also real impacts.
And now we'll probably get a call to this effect, so I'm just going to put it out there. What if there is someone who says it's going too far the other way, and that's why there's a need to pass some of these bills, because it makes people uncomfortable that there's as much talk as there is now in schools about some of these things?
Yeah, I just can't imagine that Tennessee lesson plans are full of LGBTQ material. I don't believe it. And in the few places where it might exist, like history or literature, mentioning that the writer is from our community, or that there might be a storyline, or that some people over the years have interpreted the story in the Iliad of Achilles and Patroclus as gay or bisexual. Just saying that is not some lurid depiction of sexuality. It's just a reference. It's saying people who are part of the LGBT community have always existed. People who don't accept the gender binary have always existed. People who like people of the same sex have always existed. How does that affect the storyline or not affect the storyline? Does it matter that Alexander the Great was probably bisexual? And You know, and maybe it doesn't change the way he established his empire, but he was there. And, you know, that kind of thing does not strike me as something that is going to harm anybody.
Very interesting. Okay, so that's really, we set the table big picture there. And now we're going to take a break, and I want to come back and we'll start talking about the bills. We'll kind of go through some of these bills and hear from you as well. There's the phone number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.